Okay, welcome. This is a little show called How I Became a Theosophist, and I'm very happy to have our guest today, Fernando de Torrijos.
Yes.
It's okay, okay. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
And
Pleasure.
if it's okay, I'm just going to read some questions. Okay, so first, just in general, how did you come to Theosophy? How did you become a student of Theosophy?
Well, it was in the 1970s. Then I was working in the mountains of Spain, in the border with France, in a ski resort. I was skiing practically the whole day. And I became interested in the meaning of life. Why really is so much suffering around the planet, you know? And I decided with two friends to come to the United States because I read something about the Rosicrucians in a magazine, and I noticed there there was something in San Jose, California. In this case, I rented a little car in New York without speaking any English with a couple of friends, and we went from New York to San Francisco and then to San Jose, and it was a real adventure, almost 1 month and a half. I arrived there, and I really was not too convinced about that. I read few of the things, it's nice, but it's not too convincing to me. Went back to the Rockies, spent there another month, and flew back to Spain. And I didn't want to go back to work until finding something. For that reason, I decided to make a little cabin in the middle of the mountain in the province of Avila with some branches and stones. And I took with me a little book that I found in the library of some friends called At the Feet of the Master. And I spent there 1 month and a half eating from the trees, apples, peaches, figs. The main tree was a fig tree, and I asked a shepherd to let me a little milk in a container. I didn't want to talk to anyone for that 1 month and a half. After finishing my retreat, tremendously sensitive, very thin because I lost many pounds, I went to Madrid and I went to a bookstore that was esoteric in those times to ask who was this Krishnamurti in At the Feet of the Master. And he told me, oh, Theosophical Society, they just reopened after 4 years being underground, are in this street. And I decided to go over there, and 2 or 3 days later, and I arrived to the door, and it smelled of incense coming through the door, and I knocked, and this old gentleman came. Yes, young fellow, what do you want? And I says, well, I heard that this organization is very special, and I want to know more. He read me the 3 objects, one from his heart, at the door.
Yeah.
And says, the only obligation for you is to agree with the first one. And if you agree with the first one, welcome.
Really? Yeah.
Yes. But they didn't let me to become a member until 3 months later, because they told me, you be sure that you want to join us for the right reason.
Wow.
In this case, come, listen to some of the talks, and if you think that is what you really are looking and searching for, welcome here. And it's how I started. It's how I joined the society. I was a student in the ski resort, went back and forth, And a few years later, couple of years later, some of my friends, my new friends in the organization, I told them, saying, how I can go deeper in this, because we don't have that much literature, not many books on the topic. And they told me, says, you need to learn English. And I decided to quit my job again in 1980 and come to the States to learn English.
Really? So you could read more?
I was able to read
Spiritual.
more,
Yeah.
And I went to Canada, took 2 trainings with the Sivananda ashram up there for 2 full months. The first one was in Spanish, the second one was in English with interpreters. Then I went to the Himalayan Institute of Swami Rama in Pennsylvania. Also, I spent there another 2 months in a self-transformation program. And then, meanwhile, I met Joy Mills in New York at the TS in New York. And I asked her for a scholarship to go to Crotona. And she told me, okay, but you need to learn English, because with the English you have now, it's not good enough. And I says, okay, I promise, And by January, I was in Crotona. And I spent there 4 months, and I met my wife, Ruth, there, and she went from Massachusetts. Then from there we went to Pumpkin Hollow, the farm. I spent the whole summer there. Met Dora Kunz, took all the trainings with Therapeutic Touch. From there we went to Spain. Ruth followed me and we got married over there. Well, followed me a few months later,
Yeah.
And we got married. We went to India. She became the secretary of Radha Burnier in India. We celebrated there the centenary of Adyar.
Oh, your wife?
Yeah, with my wife. She
Yeah.
was the secretary of Radha.
She was. Oh.
Yeah, and I work in TPH there in India. We stayed 5 or 6 months. And we celebrated the centenary of Adyar the same day in which Blavatsky, Olcott, and Damodar went those steps in the main building. We moved from Litviter chambers to that building because Radha asked us to move in the quarters of Ani Besant. We used Ani Besant's bathroom and shower to let more space for the guests than we are coming to the... Anyway, we met Indira Gandhi then came. I was in charge of recording everything. We were introduced to Krishnamurti.
Really?
Yes, until finally came back to Worcester, Massachusetts.
You don't fool around. I mean, you just got on the train and... Oh, boy.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about Dora Kunz and Krishnamurti?
Well, yes. Well, I will tell you.
Yeah.
When we were in Madrid, before getting married, Ruth was with me there, and we were dating in a sense and thinking of getting married. And we were staying in a friend's house in Madrid. We got a phone call. My friend told us, someone called Dora is calling and is trying to find Ruth. Dora, yes, Dora Kunz from the USA. Okay. And then that night we call and Dora talked to Ruth and says, Ruth, how soon you guys can go to India? Radha needs a secretary. Was Dora the one who gave us the news? And it's when we make the decision and we went over there. When Ruth spent many hours with Radha, and talk about many different things. But I remember one day we told her, says, we would love to meet Krishnaji personally. And Radha told us as well, he will be coming soon to Madras because every winter he comes and gives some talks here in the area. Says, but every day he comes here to walk at the beach, the one he was found and all that. And says, you can come there and for a walk and I will introduce you to him. And we did that, and was a very encounter at the beach. Hello, here is Fernando and Ruth. And next day we got a visit from Achu Padwarnan, that was the head of the Krishnamurti Foundation in India, to invite us to one of the private dialogues that we are having place and filming with Frihot Capra, Rupert Sheldrake,
really?
Yes, Rene Weber, and several others, and we went there. During that convention, Rene Weber and Dora Kunz stayed there, also in one of the bungalows. And Rene was very afraid because she was afraid of getting sick. And I remember I told her, grasp my arm and I will take you to breakfast to the Litviter chambers.
Yeah.
Dora, incredible.
Yeah.
We have the chance there to know her brother, Arthur Van Gelder, before knowing her more, because Arthur was visiting Adyar and he stayed there for a few months and we had breakfast with him every day. And he told us all the stories of their childhood, what happened with the sister, many, and also about his parents and the relationship with Besant and Litviter and all the feelings that they have. He filled us with a lot of beautiful stuff, from those years. And apparently in their family, the mother and grandmother, they will have some clairvoyant abilities. Oh. The grandmother was able to know properties of plants just by seeing them, without knowing the name of the plants.
Like anything. A shaman, right?
Yes.
Right.
And it was very popular in India, doing healing during the time that they were there. Then also apparently Dora's mother has some abilities, but one of the things with that family is that the mother always was insisting as little kids to have breaks for meditation, at least once a day. All the kids, friends, neighbors playing with them, says meditation time, and all of them will go in, stay quiet for a little bit, and after the
Wow.
yes.
Are there other people in your own family that have followed an esoteric, spiritual? No.
No,
Okay.
no that I know.
But you certainly, you certainly jumped in and right into the thick of it. And so we're going to come back to Theosophy, but the other part of your life that I was just fascinated with is that you've worked so much with John Kabat-Zinn.
Mm-hmm.
You said you worked with him for 19 years. And could you talk a little bit about that and how that came about and how that has affected you?
Well, for years since we came to Worcester, I told my wife we need to get very involved in Theosophy. We started from scratch. When we came to, after getting married, being in India and all that, we came here, we came with nothing, starting from zero, again, life, in Worcester. And I never knew why Worcester, Massachusetts, other than my wife was having 2 daughters and we went over there. But then was like a process. Learn more English, get very involved with the TS. I did a lot of lecturing in New York, different places. And my feeling was like a preparation.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said you did a lot of lecturing.
Yes.
On Theosophy.
In Spanish.
But you were still, how long had you been in the organization at that point?
In the organization then was like perhaps 6-7 years.
Still a fairly young time, fairly short time. So you just, obviously you immersed yourself right away. Were you reading in English or Spanish?
Then I was I did the transition. I was mainly in Spanish. Then I started in English. In India already, I started to read in English and do some translation into Spanish. Was a process.
So you started lecturing right away, and you were lecturing mostly in Spanish.
Yeah, in Spanish. Yeah,
Okay.
New York Lodge mainly. Then I started to go internationally, but we got very involved. 3 or 4 years later is when we went also to Boston, and we participated in studies on the Divine Plan, and that was in English, not myself lecturing, but studying with Vino Scudero and with other people in that particular time. We have our own lodge in Worcester. Yeah, very involved. The thing is, all that went through. But a few years later, I asked myself, privately, in my own meditations, how I can be more useful. How I can bring all this, that we do it from our heart, and we do all this lecturing for free, the using Bible nights, how I can make it more useful for all the suffering that is there. And afterward, doing different jobs, I decided to start in healthcare, to get a little involved with interpreting and with tobacco treatment. I became a counselor for helping people to quit smoking, things like that. And in one of those situations, and in a particular time, I noticed there was a presentation in Boston, the first Body and Soul conference organized by Interface, in which all these incredible individuals that I have been seeing on TV, on doctors, psychologists, etc., interested in Buddhism, most of them, we are having this incredible program. And I asked my supervisor, says, can I go to that? It's a little expensive. And says, oh, you have $600. Yes, you can go to that. I went there, and the keynote speaker was Robert Bly, the American poet, but he has translated many of the Spanish poets into English. I approached him that night after the keynote speech. That was incredible. I will never forget about it. Very much related to Theosophy in a sense,
Yeah.
And I told him about Juan Manuel Serrat, Spanish singer that has sing Machado's poems, and he told me, says, can you give me a copy of that tape? I did a copy. Next morning I gave it to him, and then they are at the Park Plaza Hotel in Boston. Huge, 2,000 people. There's a huge audience there, and you can put inside there. He told the audiences, I'm going to dedicate this poem of Machado to my friend Fernando. than is sitting here. I was in the first row because I was just talking to him at the last minute. And after he finished this beautiful poem, John Kabat-Zinn was in the front row next to Bernie Siegel. Bernie Siegel was to be the first speaker of the morning. John was to introduce Bernie in that particular session. And then John jumped around, sat next to me, and says, "You live in Worcester? And you speak Spanish? And you like this stuff?" And I says, "Yes." And he gave me his card, says, "Do you want to have lunch with me this coming week?" And I says, "Okay, yeah, I will stop by the hospital." And he asked me, "Do you know who am I?" Says, "I saw you on TV in one of those Bill Moyers programs, Healing on Demand." I saw you there. And I said, okay. And I took his, one of the workshops there was his, and I took the workshop during that weekend there in Boston. Then the following week, I went to the hospital and to talk to him, and we started talking, and he asked me a little about my background, and I told him, says, "Well, I am a Theosophist." And his reply immediately says, "The white Buddhist, Olcott and Blavatsky, the ones who did so much for Buddhism?" Says, "Yes, yes." And also Krishnamurti, no? And says, "Yes, of course." And I met Krishnamurti in India. "Oh my God, you did? Oh, how wonderful. And what is your experience with yoga and meditation?" And I told him I took the programs with Sivananda. I went to the Himalayan Institute. "Really? You know all these things?" Says, "Do you want to take our training?" And I told him, says, "It's too expensive. It's almost $2,000. Says, "Don't be concerned with that. I will take care of that. Do you want to take it?" And I says, "Yes, but I need to ask permission in my job because I need to take a whole day during the week to do it." And I did that. I started to take the training, and we were in the 4-week, it's a 8-week program. And in the 4-week, the teacher told me, "Fernando, John want to talk to you." I said, "Okay." And I went to talk to John, and he asked me, says, "Do you want to teach the program in spring?" And I says, "Wait a minute, I have not seen the whole curriculum. I don't know yet. Do you want or not?" Says, "I asked Ferris, and she told me that she thinks you will be able to do it." And I says, "Okay, yes, I will." And by April, at the end of April of '95, I remember I had been already doing publicity for the classes and that. I had 35 Latino patients from community health centers in Worcester sign up for the class. And John came to my first 2 classes. He didn't understand Spanish, but he just came to notice my style on dealing with a large group of very ill people. And then after that, I think also was half of the course when he came and asked me if I was wanting to become director of his inner city clinic, and also eventually to teach in English. But it's one of the things, the beauty of it is after I read the curriculum of the program, I told him, "Chapeau, I take my hat out." Because really, you have been able to take the Satipatthana Sutta of the Buddha, the Sutra of Attention, and give it a structure that can reach every single human being, without mentioning spirituality, without mentioning Buddhism, with nothing of that. And that is one of the things that he told us. Please, whatever you have learned, only use it as your foundation, what is going to give you strength to be able to do this work.
Oh, that's great.
But don't proselytize or don't do anything. Respect other people's places. Just help them to move within, to get in touch with themselves. It's the only thing you need to do. And when we did interview to those patients, with the one who was my teacher, I felt awkward because I am not a psychologist, I am not a physician. I had never done really that. I had done a little for the tobacco treatment, counseling. But my teacher told me, she was a psychologist, and she told me, "Fernando, this you will do better than us." And I says, "Why?" She says, "Because you will not label people. When we listen to them and we ask questions, what is bringing you here and all that, says we will say, oh, this person has this, has that. Because you don't know, you will not label them. You just will listen to their heart. And I said, well, if that is what you think is right, I will do it that way. And yes, I stayed on it for a long time. One thing was very clear from John that he told me, please, whatever you do, never imitate me or never imitate anyone else. Teach for what you know, from your own foundation.
What humility.
His idea is, and he told me, says, if not, will not be credible. If you repeat words from someone else, then you have not assimilated and make it really yours, people will know.
So I think that's beautiful. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. I imagine you have also discussed a lot, or perhaps even taught theosophy, given lectures. So now, how do you? Much of what is in theosophy is perhaps not something that you've experienced personally. So then, how can you keep that accurate and make it your own? Do you know what I'm asking? Yeah, because it's not quite the same as meditation, is it? Or am I wrong?
No, it's different. It's a little what the whole idea, the whole foundation, and it's what the Dian Chohan, the Maha Chohan told about Olko's work.
Yeah.
You know, it's about suffering. How we can alleviate suffering. How we can provide people with tools that will help them to come out from the hole in which they are in. And the mindfulness, which the thing that we really work with there, is the capacity of becoming fully present in the here and now, unconditionally, without making any judgment, listening, perceiving.
You've been practicing this for quite a while now. Is it possible for you to describe a little bit how it has helped you? How has it affected you personally, or is that too hard to note? Can you notice?
Well, the beauty of becoming a mindfulness-based stress reduction, any of the branches teacher, the one who learned the most is the teacher. Because in those particular classes, and at the beginning it's very difficult, the idea is to help people to educate their minds or train their minds in a very subtle way to stop interfering, to allow themselves to be who they really are, to let all the baggage that they are carrying of uncertainty, fear, lack of self-esteem, little by little to drop, and allow the beauty that they have, that inner wisdom, the self-compassion and compassion to emerge. That is the role of the teacher. It's not any other role. This person is coming with fibromyalgia, the other is coming with cancer, the other is coming with severe depression. In the inner city, sometimes 80% of the patients are with severe depression and anxiety. But the whole idea is how I can allow you to taste within you the nectar of harmony in a way that you know you have it, without me telling you anything. That is very enriching to me, because when you see person after person after person doing, wow, you know?
Yeah. What do you say to a person new to meditation who you can tell they're sincere, they would really like to do it, but for some reason they say something like, I understand how it has helped you and that person, but it's just not for me. When I can't sit still, it just will never work for me. What do you say to that person?
Well, tell the person that in this particular program, you only need to do what you are able to do. The more important thing is to take care of yourself in the process. Since the mind It's a wonderful, wonderful instrument that we have, but loves to go in 100,000 directions. Because that is the nature of the mind.
Yeah.
And as you try to control the mind, it's worse.
Yeah.
Because love the challenge, and start to go more. This is how we can do it to help that mind to little by little to start to calm down. That is what we are going to be learning little by little.
Yeah.
And we are not going to put you to meditate. No. It's a little process. And one lady that came in one occasion to see me, she was sleeping in her car. She has been with mental conditions for a long time. She was completely destitute. I have always one or two or three homeless person in my classes. And she came and says, I have tried everything, Fernando, but my therapist told me to come to see you and participate in this program. I don't know what I can gain here. And I told her, says, look, do you know who Michelangelo was? This sculpture, painter, the Renaissance, Italy. Oh, says, well, here we are going to do something very similar and something that he did. He did this beautiful Pietà that is in Rome, in the Vatican. The Virgin Mary with Jesus in beautiful Carrara marble. When he went to do that, he went to the mountain where they cut the pieces of marble, and he went there and asked the foreman, I want a piece of this size for this commission that I have. And the foreman says, oh, I have the perfect piece here. And Michelangelo told him, no, I want from that corner of the mountain where the sun is now giving, in, yeah. So that is going to take 2 or 3 months. I don't care. I have time. Just bring it to the shop. 2 or 3 months later, the big piece into the shop, and the foreman asked me, Michelangelo, why this piece? He says, because what I am going to sculpt is there. I can see it. And the thing I'm going to do with the chisel and the hammer is start to remove all the extra stuff. In the stress reduction program, our belief it's like everybody came to this planet, to this world, with a jewel here. Can be a ruby, can be a diamond, can be an emerald, amethyst, sapphire, because we are all different. We have different color, perhaps, but we are all beautiful. The idea is, in this program, we are going to start little by little, through different practices. CDs we will give you to practice, to remove this clouds of fear, uncertainty, lack of self-esteem, to allow that beauty that has been always there to come to the surface again and start to radiate through you and into others. That is what we do in the program. Do you want to participate? That's where I can sign. Says, and get permission to be in touch with your therapist just in case, because I have people that have sometimes epileptic attacks, things like that. Yeah. Says, and meditation, the first 2 weeks, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, sitting in a dignified position, allowing the chair to give you all the support that you need in this moment, to be present in your own presence, noticing your breath. Very smooth. Week number 5, 6, 40 minutes. You cannot hear a pin in the whole classroom. All in silence. Just little by little. Yeah.
Now, perhaps some poets who seem to spring from silence. We both talked earlier, and we both love the poets that Robert Bly has translated from South America. Could you talk a little bit about why you love some of these poets? Well, Machado was from Spain, is that right?
Yeah.
But the others, Jimenez and Lorca and Neruda.
Yeah, because we are from Spain too. You have Neruda from Chile, and of course Mary Oliver. We use it, and Rumi also. We use Rumi. The poem that normally I start the program with, and it's the poem that Robert Bly recited to me when I met John Kabat-Zinn. And when we went with John to Argentina, because I started to go to Latin America, and the first trip I did it with John Kabat-Zinn to Buenos Aires. That is the first thing we did there. If you one I can recite it.
Sure, please,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, let's see if I remember by heart in English. And it's a translation from the Spanish version, the original. The wind, one brilliant day, called to my soul with an odor of jasmine. In exchange for this jasmine odor, I would like all the odor of your roses. I had no roses. I had not flowers in my garden anymore. All are dead. I will take the cry of the fountains, the yellow leaves, the dried petals. The wind left, I wept. Soul, what you have done with the garden entrusted to you. Soul, what you have done with the garden entrusted to you. And the moral is that we all come to this life with a garden to cultivate. Our own garden. And our own duty. Our own dharma. But suddenly one day we get distracted. We get the wrong job. We follow the wrong advice. We get married to the wrong person. And start to do the work of others and forget completely about our own work.
Can I add? Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but some of these poets who I was drawn to intuitively before I was interested in a spiritual path, I wondered, they're not necessarily talking about what we would call a spiritual path or even meditation. Do you know what I'm asking? So these poets might be out drinking in the bar and then come back later and so what are they?
That is the funny thing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't learn to love poetry as much as when I joined this group of John in Worcester.
Okay.
I know a lot of poetry by heart because I learned in the school, in the Spanish ones, you know. I learned including St. John of the Cross. But I didn't understand St. John of the Cross until I joined this group.
Yeah.
That is what gave me the flame. Those poets, you listen to Neruda reciting his own poems, it's terrible.
It's terrible?
He's off.
I didn't know that.
His voice is off. And Mary Oliver, I listen to her, doesn't have the punch.
So why?
They write beautiful, but then you need someone else that will get the inspiration from
like an actor.
Yes, then you will get, it says, wait a minute. When you go into the journey of Mary Oliver and start the first two lines, finally, one day you knew what you have to do and begin. Finally, one day you know what you have to do and begin. Those two lines already.
Yeah. Do you think it's necessary for a poet or for a teacher, spiritual teacher, to live what they write or teach about? Because sometimes it's not the case.
You need to have it within you. Yes, I think my mother's side, they were all actors, you know. Their theater, movie. My father's side was aristocrats, but you always need to have a little on your own system to be able. Not everybody can become a teacher of this kind of things, you know. You need to have it because to reach other people, to engage, to move other people. Like a poem moves me. If the poem doesn't move me, how you wanna me when I recite the poem to move other people?
Yeah.
And when we do the classes, maybe sometimes I will not need to use poems. The group is already moving along very well on their own. I will not need to bring this one. But when I see the whole group is stuck, is not moving, something is, then I says, what will be good here to break this situation? And then suddenly a poem of the many that I have there and we have as teachers come up and says, wait a minute, or let me tell you a story. The cook and the chickpea of Rumi. Do you know who was Rumi? No, we don't have any idea. Oh, let me tell you. You don't know about him? Let me tell you. You know, and you have the whole class there. And then you tell the story of this cook that is doing preparing some things on pots and notice this little garbanzo bean complaining. I cannot take it anymore. It's too hot here. And then the lesson says, wait a minute, you are there for a reason. You are getting the heat, you are getting the flavors, you are becoming softer and tender and that to be meal for others. And you take that, or you take the other story, or you elaborate, or you stretch it to keep the people moving deeper and deeper and deeper into themselves. And then their own poetry, their own beauty, their own wisdom start to surface, including people that are illiterate, people that never learn how to read or to write. They identify, like this old gentleman from Puerto Rico told me, says, do you remember that Rumi poem about guest house? And he says, yes. He says, I put it in the mirror in my house when I shave in the morning. He says, why? You did that. He says, and you know I don't know how to read, but what he says there is me. For that reason I put it there. He says, good for you. Mendan has been taking care of pigs and chicken and all that, and now he knows how to be present in his own presence. You know, that is John Kabat-Zinn's program. And in our clinic in Worcester, only over 18,000 people has gone through as a complementary intervention to whatever treatment they are getting by their physician or whoever, because are the physicians the ones who make the referrals.
Yeah.
And the psychiatrists and the psychologists.
Do you think it's important to know why it works or how it works? Maybe not. I mean,
it's not important, but I think the Buddha was a scientist, because what he taught later on, he just practiced on himself. See what happened. And the Satipatthana Sutta is precisely, or the Sutra of Attention, or mindfulness, or right perception, is used to help the mind to stop interfering.
yeah.
And our mind, by nature, and the process of evolution that we are now, is interfering constantly. And the whole sutra was to help the mind, the psychological aspect of the mind, one in Theosophy we call the lower manners, the one who is based in past and future, to stop interfering and then allow that deeper aspect that we have of a deeper vision in which intuition, compassion, wisdom come through, to be active. The mind that is watching very patiently behind all the time, waiting for you to stop.
So, and in the same spirit, so some of the mind work you do, reading something like Theosophy, is essentially stopping the lower mind, isn't it?
Yes and not, because sometimes Theosophists, we are our worst enemies. We get trapped ourselves in a lot of intellectual stuff.
So now, what would you recommend? So how do you help that from not happening so much?
It's very important and has been highlighted from the very beginning. The importance to create a balance in between study, meditation, and service. And keep it like that. Keep it like that in a balance. Yes, you study this, now you assimilate, you sit to meditate, and just get the feeling of what this really means, and doesn't need to be a long thing, and even somewhat very clearly, just read small little things, and then how you can apply in daily life. And it's not to me, it's in my profession, and whatever I am doing, how I can make a difference. It's a lot of suffering out there. And by talking about suffering, and by going around, it's not. You need to live the life. You need to make it. And that is what John Kabat gave me the opportunity to do. All these years studying Theosophy, all those years practicing meditation, I told myself, something is lacking here. Something is missing. And then when I learned about mindfulness, that is what was missing. The only fear that we have is becoming fashion, and it's becoming like, oh, now is the thing that sells, mindfulness, you know? And but it's always a risk. It's always a risk when those things happen.
I'm going to jump a little bit for the next question about the
I don't
masters.
know if I'm talking too much.
No, it's great. No. Do you think the masters are still active in the Theosophical Society?
The masters is still active everywhere. Not just in the Theosophical Society.
Okay.
And they don't want whiners or people, no. They want people that will be able to be useful for the work. And the work is waking up humanity and alleviating suffering. That is the work. And my feeling, yes, they are around, and they are maybe with different clothes, and maybe they are with ties, and maybe they have different names. I don't know, And I consider the Dalai Lama someone who is really, really advanced in that particular regard, in that particular sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I am sure there are others around too.
Yeah. John Kabat-Zinn also, I'm not saying he was a master, but he also was motivated primarily by compassion, it seemed to you?
He himself, I say, peculiar family. His mother was an artist, writer, and his father was a scientist, discovered different things. He was in Columbia University through the years, and he has that kind of mix of both branches, And he became interested in yoga. He was teaching yoga in Cape Cod in the summer house over there, and also he got interested in Zen Buddhism, and of course he went into the Harvard area there in Cambridge, in MIT, and was friend with Richie Davidson when there was a student in Harvard, and with Danny Goleman also, the whole entourage. They were friends there, then they went to learn all these things, and then they started their careers, and they got that flavor from the Buddhism. The more beautiful thing of that movement, and I feel that masters maybe are behind also, Mahachohan or whatever, is in the 1970s, all this started to happen. And suddenly, in the early 80s, you have two individuals. Adam Engel is a businessman with a Buddhism background. He loved to practice Buddhism. And you have Francisco Varela from Chile, a neuroscientist.
Oh.
Yeah. Then by that time he was in La Sorbonne in France, but also practicing Buddhism. He came to Ohio in '81 and was in Young Halifax, was running one center there, and he has some presentations. There are some videos on that. Anyway, both of them approached the Dalai Lama and asked him, "Yes, Your Holiness, we would love to explore more what meditation does to the brain. Do you mind to help us by providing some monks that maybe they will be willing to us to explore with the latest equipment and all that to see what happened in the heads?" And then was yet with electrodes, and they didn't have in those years in the 80s, they didn't have this huge MRI scanners or anything like that. And the Dalai Lama says, "Why not? You put your equipment, I will put my monks." And it's how they started. They went over there. It was a failure. The monks didn't want to. They said, "We don't care about that. Let us alone."
Oh, they didn't care?
No. Then they came back, and the following year they got Matthew Ricard, that was a monk but from France originally, and he has written several books now and has been, is very famous. He came. And then other monks, and they did, in Wisconsin, they did some of the exploration of the brain. Matthew can be in the tube, in that thing for 6-7 hours and come out smiling with no problems after being like and the whole Mind and Life Institute started. John Kabat-Zinn is one of the members of the board. Danny Goleman is, Richard Davidson is, John Halifax is, all the entourage of Matthew Ricard is members of the board with the Dalai Lama. And they have been doing all these gatherings since, I think has been 14 or 15. Each of one has come with a book, healing emotions, destructive emotions, all those things, and writing about those gatherings of scientists and contemplatives together during the last 25 years. But the funny thing, when they did the second presentation in Dharamsala about emotional health, John Kabat-Zinn was invited to present his program. He was already with the program like 8-9 years, something like that. He has not published his first book yet. And he did his presentation to the Dalai Lama. Cisco Varela was there, and Richard Davidson, and Sharon Salzberg. And one of the scholars, Buddhist scholars from Britain, came to John after and says, "What you are doing is trash." Yeah. Says, "What?" "Yes, pure trash. How you dare to do that to the Dharma, to the teachings?" John mentioned that he was not able to sleep in the whole night. But next day he went to see His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, first thing. And asked him, says, what do you think about what I am doing, my work? He asked the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama grabs his hands, says, Dear John, how many Buddhists are in this planet? 3 million? 50 million? Don't know, I keep putting a number now. How many human beings? John, the Dharma need to reach every sentient being. Everyone that is suffering need to be able to have that access in whatever language, in whatever format, in whatever way that will be able to help them. Continue with the work. You are doing a wonderful work. Then John decided to take a sabbatical. He wrote the book Full Catastrophe Living. Bill Moyers came, included in the Healing and the Mind, and from 2-3 research things that he did at the beginning, because the medical director in UMass Medical Center told him, if you want to go anywhere, you need to start to do research from the very beginning. 2 studies, first one on anxiety, second one on pain. Then for the first 10 years, a total of 40 studies. Now there are over 2,800 studies that has done with the mindfulness work into them, research in hospitals and institutions. And not only that, is increasing the National Institute of Health became involved, and I will be talking in my lecture, I will be talking about that. And also in England now the health system has accepted that as one of the interventions, etc. Just something that started.
Right. Like you said, it seems like it's something greater underneath to allow all this to unfold on its own. It seems like your career and also John Kabat-Zinn's work and career, it just sort of unfolded. Mm-hmm. Like it was supposed to, like it was time.
When you ask, are the masters there?
Yeah.
Are the masters guiding people what to do, what not to do? Yes. Yes. Yeah. And when these things happen to one, you can always, when he invited me, I always can say, oh no, I don't have interest, I had my theosophy. You reflect. And that is what I say, right perception. When he went to the hospital, and asked the physicians, how many of your patients get better? And the answer was less than 10%.
That's in with any illness?
A whole hospital, how many patients get better?
Only 10%.
Less than 10%. For the frustration of the physician, for the frustration of the patients, for the frustration of everybody, because maybe the physician doesn't not talk to the patient properly, maybe because the patient doesn't have the inner strength to take the medications, for whatever, that was the figure. He thought, how we can put a net that we can trap or catch everybody that is falling through the cracks of the system and help them. And it's how the stress reduction clinic came about. But he decided not to give it the name yoga classes or meditation classes. No, because that was to kill it. Or spirituality. He says, don't mention the word spiritual in those classes at all. The body, mind, and spirit, forget about the spirit. This is a stress reduction program for someone with chronic pain, someone with cancer, someone with depression, period. But behind the whole thing is the whole thing. You don't need to talk about it. People know it.
Just the last question. Just a little bit, I know it's hard to give general advice because people are so different, but a little bit of general advice to new people who come new, and maybe it's the first time they've started on a spiritual path as an adult. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes people don't feel as a child that it was right for them, whatever they were exposed to. And so what advice would you give to them?
The thing, people has been saying, and happened to me, suddenly one day a book fell from somewhere on your hands, and oh God, and what is this, and there your interest starts. My advice is, beginner's mind. Become like a child again. To wander, to explore. Okay? But with the wisdom of a grow-up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
because that is the only way. And then find your path. Find your path. Be respectful of others. Listen to others, because from everybody we can learn a lot. But follow your own heart. Follow your bliss, like Joseph Campbell
Yeah.
will say. Because that is the more important thing. But again, there is a lot of work to be done. And the more important thing is each one of us to do our own path and help in the best way we can in according to our abilities. Sometimes, like in the little book at the Feet of the Master says, first you need to study those things that will make you more useful to do the work. Then select those things, And sometimes some people, you ask other people and can give you, like they told me, you need to learn English. Or when I gave my first talk on the Gita, at the beginning of my theosophical life, they told me, one of the old members says, very nice, but you need to study a lot more. Young fellow. I said, okay, thank you for the advice. But I just try. I was wanting to see I can talk in front of the people,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's part of it too, right? Being willing to take chances, and
Yeah.
it's okay to not be incredibly successful at something.
And
or-
make
yeah.
mistakes
Yeah,
and
make
adventures.
mistakes, yeah.
And then, because the last 4 years I work in psychiatry, I was asked by the chairman of the department in UMass to do something in his department, and he was puzzled why John Kabat-Zinn and Saki didn't go there to mental health. And I know they didn't want to have this program as another psychology program or something like that. For that reason, they put it in medicine. John Kabat put it in medicine to take away the stereotype of psychiatry.
Very
and
smart.
psychology.
Yeah.
Yes. But I understand, because in the inner city program, 80% of our patients we have mental conditions. Apart of the physical, we are having mental conditions. In this case, when the chairman asked me, I says, okay, I will give it a try. And I got involved with everybody. I did training for the staff. I created a program for the residency. And then I started to work with the acute patients and with the adolescents hospitalized. Then I went to a prison, maximum security in New Jersey, to the program with female inmates. And one of the female inmates in the program was a 5-day intensive that I did in this prison in New Jersey. In the last class, she asked me, says, Fernando, what has happened here in these 5 days with this group? Some of us are going to be here for life. What has happened here, happened in your classes out there? And I told her, exactly the same. No difference.
Really.
Exactly the same. We were hugging, the guards didn't allow. They hugged me. One of the guards came and said, and she was pale, this girl, this lady, thinking they're going to put me in the hole there, and then they put it in isolation for whatever. But no, the guard smiled, because the first day they were very rude, but after, as we went through the 5 days, by the third day the guards came there and
Really?
Yes, it was completely changed. Yeah, it's transformative. It's tremendous, because people have it there. They have created a block, but the beauty is there. The beauty is there. It's just to allow it to come out. And I think what better word for a theosophist than that?
I just want to thank you for
Thank
your
you.
wisdom and for your time.
Thank you.
Really been enjoyable to listen.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.